Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet. I've got no rhythm. Today I'm going to take you through some recent reads at the end of May, at least 3 novels here, so that should, and I'll give you an idea of what I thought about them and how I got to them. So the first of these is a book that was on my radar since I started on BookTube. As I started paying attention, this was a new novel at the time. A lot of people were talking about it and reading it. It took me about another year to buy it. So I started BookTube, say December 2020. I purchased this December 21, and it's now May 23, and I finally got around to reading it. I'm talking about The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. Definitely worth all the praise that it received. I know I'm coming to it a couple of years late. Fantastic, a debut novel. The writing is exquisite. It explores 2 slaves on a plantation and their relationship with each other. Their romantic, well, maybe romance is too light a word, but the deep bond that these 2 slaves find with each other, and how that plays out in the humiliation and the degradation and just the revolting life that is forced upon them in slavery. Every sentence is beautifully crafted. The writing's exquisite. I think it's a little too long. And it's a horrible, it's such an easy claim to make about a novel. It's about 350 pages. I just feel like it might be harder to edit a novel where the sentence per sentence, it's beautifully constructed. Maybe harder for an editor to say, we really need to kill some of these darlings and cut it down a little bit. But there were lulls for me. There were moments when it dragged, and perhaps some of those were that the ancestral memories. So most of the novel takes place on the plantation, and we see from the point of view of each of our 2 protagonists, and we see the plantation owner and his life and disappointments and just abject horror. We see his wife, also a dreadful character, but we see other slaves on the plantation as well, and the ways they have found to make to get through to the next day. Some of it's very raw, some of it's very painful and maybe triggering for some people, but it's beautifully written. I just think I could have done with a little bit less, and I'm very keen to find out and read what Robert Jones Jr. is going to do next, because, as I say, great writing, not all the way perfect for me as a whole, because I just thought there was maybe 80 pages too much here. The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. After that, I read the second of Mick Herron's Zoe Bohm books. I think these are often listed as the Oxford Investigations. There are 4 of them. These were written before he started the Slough House series. So I've gone back. I've started reading his sort of modern, hugely successful spy series, which the first one was called Slow Horses. It's been made into an Apple TV series with Gary Oldman as Jackson Lamb, and actually second season was even better than the first season. 6 episodes. How the British like to do things in and out. So there've been 2 6 episode seasons, and the second was even stronger than the first. So I love those, and I thought it can be hit and miss going back and reading an earlier series by an author that you've glommed onto, and so far so good. So the first of these was called, I don't even remember what it was called, and this is the second. I don't have the third and the fourth yet, but I'm going to get them. I don't think this was quite as strong as the first, so I really enjoyed the first one, in which Zoe Bohm, who is the private investigator at the heart of this book, which she was more a peripheral character in that first one, where we met her husband, and the focus is really on another character who also shows up here. I don't want to spoil anything, but so some of this is familiar. There, she's hired to find somebody. Meanwhile, there's an old case which is nudging her at the back of her mind, and so she's sort of investigating what happened to a case that she was involved in 4 years ago. And as we see in many of these things, is there some overlap mysteriously between this cold case of hers or old case of hers from 4 years ago and this new case that she's been assigned to? That's a kind of trope that you often see in these things. Actually, I think it plays out a little differently here than expected, but also there's a lot of early investigations and getting on trains and going to, she's based in Oxford, going to London and seeing people and visiting people and climbing high rises and attending funerals and all the sort of classic PI stuff. And then there's a point at which probably 2/3 in, where there is a sudden ramping up, sudden violence, and then a just acceleration towards a denouement, which was kind of thrilling, if a little bonkers. So enjoyable read. Yeah, something to read in waiting for the next Jackson Lamb Slough House book to come out. But definitely there's 2 more of these, and I've got a collection of short stories which has, I think, at least 1 short story with Zoe Bohm, and also a Jackson Lamb crossover, so I've got that as well. I may read that while I'm waiting to pick up, because I'm still on a book buying ban. That was The Last Voice You Hear by Mick Herron, the second in the Oxford Investigations or Zoe Bohm PI series. After that, I read another author. This is great. This is an author that I said I wanted to read more of, so I bought more of her books, and then kept buying other books and reading those. But in this year of not buying new books, I'm going through and whittling down my TBR, and I read The Reef by Edith Wharton. So I read, I think, the 4 classic Wharton novels, starting with The Age of Innocence. Ethan Frome is the novella, and then I'd also read The Custom of the Country and The House of Mirth back in the day. And those, I think, those are probably the 4 best known. And at a certain point, I was looking at Edith Wharton. I kind of want to get hold of Hermione Lee's biography, but it's ginormous. And I think once I'm off the book buying ban, I think that'll be one of the books that I pick up. But I also saw there were other novels of hers that I had never read and wasn't even really familiar with their placement. So I read last year. I read Summer, which was quite light and brief. And this time around, I read The Reef, which was bigger than I thought it was going to be. It's 350 pages. There's an introduction in this edition. This is the Penguin 20th Century Classics, that lovely sort of pale green thing with a full bleed cover. Wow. And about 350 pages. And I read the intro from Anita Bruckner, a novelist, one of those novelists I've never read. And the intro kind of spoiled the plot for me. A biggie. That's how it is with these penguins. You can't. They're written to be, or they're published as if you've already read them. So you just want to add this book to your thing. So when they put in the intro, she revealed the entire plot of who did what to whom. Okay, I'm a big boy. That's my lookout. But all the other comment that she makes in it is, this is the most Henry Jamesian of Edith Wharton's novels. This is the novel of hers that Henry James admired the most. Now, we don't talk much about Henry James, and I've read a few Henry James. When I started university, where they are. That is Henry James there, I believe. That one with a picture on the top is Portrait of a Lady, and I've got the Bostonians and thing, and I think that's him. And I've got, is that right? No, it can't be, because that's Neil Gaiman. So that's not Henry James at all. That's Elizabeth Gaskell. Anyway, he's over there. So he's up somewhere on a shelf somewhere, Henry James. Sorry for mistaking Elizabeth Gaskell for Henry James. But I've read a few Henry James many years ago, and they kind of went, apart from the Portrait of a Lady, which I really admired, very long sentences. It was an author that I wanted to have read, and so ploughed my way through 3 or 4 of his books. And I think it was assigned to me for my first year of university. So Henry James praising this isn't a big way for me, but actually I had some kind of sense memory reading the story of Portrait of a Lady. I don't know. I'm sure great literary scholars could draw the parallels much more. But yes, that did. Even though I was clearly prompted by Bruckner's introduction, otherwise I might not have made the connection to Henry James at all. Anyway, it's a story of a selfish man who has an ill-advised affair with a young lady while he's feeling rejected from his more age-appropriate lover, and then 6 months later, when he gets back together with the lover who he thought had rejected him, and they're making plans, things come back to haunt him. So our lead character is George Darrow. He's pretty unpleasant. The woman that he wants to marry is Anna Neath, who's sort of emotionally constipated, and in the back of all this is this sort of manic dream pixie girl, Sophie Viner, who is kind of perfect but also a tragic figure in this. Kind of loved it. I may, if there are more Edith Wharton books that I haven't picked up, I'm going to be encouraged to pick them up and read them, because when I'm buying books, there's always something new and shiny to read. But actually come back and picking this up, and this is written sort of 1912, so before The Age of Innocence, which is an outstanding. If you haven't read The Age of Innocence, that's where to start, because it's just an exquisite book, and an equally amazing movie. Daniel Day-Lewis and Michelle Pfeiffer are just at the absolute top of their powers. But this is sort of 1912, which realizes only 20 years after Tess the D'Urbervilles. Hardy was still alive till 1927, but we think of Hardy's novels as being very rural and countryside and Victorian, and here we have people sending telegrams, using the telephone, riding in motor cars, but actually only 20 years between them, and some similarities, I think, again, sort of Tess and our heroine here, Sophie Viner. Tess, a terrible, tragic book, but this is not quite as tragic, but still sad. And there's more joy to be had in Wharton, but this was kind of wonderful. After that, picked up a comic book. This is the B.P.R.D first omnibus, which I bought as a lot on Facebook Marketplace last year in the UK. And I've read a bunch of Hellboy by now and haven't read much about the B.P.R.D, the Bureau for Paranormal Research and something, whatever the last one is. It's not department because it's a bureau. So it's got paranormal research and something. We should know what B.P.R.D stands for. So here you get all the background characters to Hellboy, and this starting point for this is Hellboy has left the B.P.R.D. The B.P.R.D were the people that found Hellboy when he was a small child in the 1940s, and these, I think, are set in the 80s, and something has happened, and Hellboy has left the B.P.R.D, and the people left behind Liz Sherman, who controls or doesn't control fire. You've got Abe Sapien, who is a man-fish, you may remember from those early the first two Guillermo del Toro Hellboy movies. You've also got a character called Roger the Homunculus. You have Johann Kraus, who is a disembodied spirit who exists in a suit to make sure he doesn't dissipate entirely. And weird goings on. This was a romp. This was a lot of fun. So Mignola is mostly the writer here, but there are also other writers and other artists here. Some very faithful to the style of Mignola, and some just doing their own thing. You've got monsters under the bed, you've got witches, you have unsettled ghosts, and all sorts of creatures, and leading into what I think becomes a major plot line throughout this world going forwards, which is the Plague of Frogs, which means one thing for Jews at Passover, means a whole other thing in the world of Hellboy and the B.P.R.D. After that, I read the second in this series. So this started with Outline, which I read round the pool in Egypt last year, and this is the second in Rachel Cusk's trilogy. What's the last one called? I can't remember, but I have it. And Outline was this weirdly antiseptic but very readable, sort of very cold and clinical retelling of the narrator is always telling what just happened. I was on a plane and I met somebody, and then but you don't see much inside her mind. You see her not even commenting on the stories she's being told or the experience she's having. Just a very cool, calm presentation of events, which has this cumulative build-up of what is this? What? And something very special. I really enjoyed Outline, and I was looking forward to Read and Transit, and I wasn't disappointed. I picked up this hardback novel. I think it must be this is secondhand. I got this, but it's covered. This must have been a library edition. It seems to have had that library page, but there's no stamps on it anywhere, so I don't know in whose library it was or where this was. Anyway, this is a little longer. I think this is even stronger than Outline. I really enjoyed this. So Outline, our narrator, who is herself a writer, was in Greece attending or leading a creative writing course. So we got a lot of stories of her students and the stories they were telling, and she just does these amazing digressions where one story leads into another story, and it all seems to have originated with this narration, and we're not quite sure where it leads, but there is this overarching theme of parenting. Certainly there's something here. The narrator has two sons, but they're never really around her. They're with her ex-husband, and she only ever hears their voice on the phone, and they're calling because something's wrong, and she just records this conversation and then breaks it off and carries on listening to someone else's problems as a parent or what that's been like. and there's some just strange situations. Aren't strange, they all seem very normal. And so it's very readable, very accessible. Nice big print, doesn't hurt at all. But as I say, this cumulative sense of observation and narration, even to being disconnected from your own life and your own story, at odds with the fact that this woman is a storyteller. This is how she's made her living, and so every instance, every conversation she has with the builder, and a lot of this is going on. Her apartment is being refurbished, and the people downstairs keep banging on the ceiling because the builders make a lot of noise. So she has a lot of conversations with the builders. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to rip up the floor, and we're going to do. And everything is recorded, and everything is narrated, and we hear what the builder thought, and then the joiner, who's from Albania, or he just wants to go back to Poland, and you hear his story in broken English, and the book that he wants to read, and how he misses his family, and how he built this house, but his father never gave him any respect, and these digressions go off, and these weird tangents, but they're all part of someone's story, and her role is capturing this story even while in transit. Beguiling, kind of hypnotic, and wonderful. Looking forward to the third one. Kudos, is that what it's called? It's in the other room. That was Rachel Cusk's Transit, the second in this outline trilogy. I'm not sure what the name of the trilogy is. And after that, I'm currently reading Salesman in Beijing by Arthur Miller, which is a diary of Miller's time directing a version of his play, his Pulitzer Prize winning play from 1949, Death of a Salesman, directing it in Beijing in 1983, a Chinese language version of the play. His experience in China, his conversations with the actors who are paid by the state. This is state-owned theatre, and the space is entirely state-owned, and at a time when China is just opening up. I think the China of '93, which is only 40 years ago, is probably very different from the China today. This is an awakening and a starting to open its doors up to the West. There had been throughout there had been a time in China where there were only 8 acceptable plays, and all these state actors had been removed and banned from performing. They still got their wage because they were paid by the state, but they had to work in rice fields or do other jobs in order to maintain that. And now we're seeing a slight opening up. I think there'd been a production of The Crucible, and Miller is invited to direct a version of Death of a Salesman. So the play itself, Death of a Salesman, is such an American play. I studied it when I was 16 to 18, last 11th to 12th grade for my A-level, and became a long life Arthur Miller fan. And maybe when I finish this and I do this, I'll do a sort of breakdown of all the plays that I've read and seen, and the time I met Arthur Miller. So that's Salesman in Beijing. Loving this. And that's all. God bless. Bye.